history is like the best major, you know? You can literally study anything in any topic without having to do any of the work. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be answering your questions about what it's like to be a history major. Most of these questions I've already received at some point in my life because the questions that people ask history majors are excessively repetitive. People only have like the same two questions to ask us at any given time. For example, I can't tell you how many times people, mostly the same person, has asked me, oh, do you know when World War II ended? And yes, the answer to that is 1945. But not all questions are the same. Not everybody asks me if I know when World War II ended or if I know when the stock market crashed, which was in 1929. Some people actually have the sense to ask me other questions, and these are the ones that I will be sharing with you today. So, with that prologue, I shall now proceed. So let's get started with the first question, which is, what jobs can you get by being a history major? That is a great question because everybody has the assumption that being a history major is pointless, or when you tell people that you're majoring in history, they always ask you, what are you going to do with that? Because they assume that the only career avenues that you have are being a teacher, mostly in high school, or being a professor at a university. And that is not the case. You do not have to be a teacher in high school, or you do not have to be a university professor if you do not want to. There are a plethora of other avenues in which you can explore and utilize your history degree. For example, you can be a lawyer, you can be a CEO of a company, you can be a politician, you can be an archivist, you can be a librarian, you can be an archaeologist, you can be any of these things and more. Do not limit yourself to the jobs that people say work for history majors. If you have a certain skill set and you feel like you've developed that skill set through history, or if you feel like the same skills that you learned in the history major are applicable to a certain career that you want, go for it, because that is great. Let me tell you right now that Martha Stewart was a history major. Anyway, second question. What are the pros and cons of being a history major? That is also a great question because being a history major is beautiful, and in my opinion, there aren't any cons in the actual curriculum. I feel like most of the cons are in people's reaction to your major. A pro of being a history major is that the history department is usually quite small, and that is excellent because that means you can establish a better relationship with the professors, you can get to know them well, not just so that you can make connections and have advancements in your career, that's great as well, but you can also maybe form friendships with them, or, you know, be able to talk to them and just have somebody who shares a similar passion as you. Another pro of being in a history major is that you get to work with really cool stuff. And I guess that could technically be said of almost any major. We get super excited when we get to go down to archives and special collections and look at very old documents and handle very old things with white latex gloves. It's peak history major nerd moment. It is peak excitement. You will find us down there screaming our heads off in pure joy. Forget I said that. That was entirely false. That was a joke. Cons of the history major. Some cons that exist around us is the fact that people do not like us. They think that we are wasting our time and our money, and they think that we are a bunch of dusty old bores who do not like to have fun or do modern things. Another con of the history major is that people think that your major is fake, and they say things like, if you can find the answers on Quizlet, then it's not a real major. And I understand the validity in that argument, because what's the point of paying for a class if you can look up the same information and on Quizlet and find it out yourself by doing a bunch of online flashcards? However, this argument is null because it assumes that history majors just have to write down a bunch of facts verbatim and that all we do is memorize dates and names and locations, and that is entirely not the case. If you take a history class, if you become a history major, you will find out that dates and names and places are not as important as being able to interpret and analyze why a certain historical phenomena happened. Number 3, are the classes hard? I think that question is pretty easily answered because in any subject, classes are going to be hard and classes are going to be easy. In college, we obviously have the entry-level courses and then we have the higher division courses. The higher division courses are reserved for history majors only because there's very specific courses that we need to graduate. But apart from that, at least in my university, all the other courses are open to anybody because they serve as GEs. So yes, they would have to also be formulated in a way that can cater to people who are not history majors and who might not have the same skill set. Question number 4, what was my inspiration for becoming a history major? When I was in 7th grade, I had an amazing history teacher. Not only did I have an amazing history teacher, I had an amazing textbook. Yes, I loved the textbook. I geeked out over the textbook. And why was this? Our textbook was not one of those very boring, dry textbooks that was like, King Henry VIII of England had 6 wives. He separated from the Catholic Church and formed the Anglican Church.
Wanted to marry his second wife, Anne Boleyn, who he later beheaded when she failed to produce a male heir, only having produced the future Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I also had 2 half-siblings, Queen Mary and King Edward.
Yeah. Most history textbooks are like that, but this one was not. Let me give you some examples. When we were learning about the tradition of using stained glass in Gothic cathedrals during the medieval period in Europe, we did not just simply learn about stained glass and we did not just simply look at pictures of stained glass. Instead, we made our own stained glass. It was this hands-on learning experience that really allowed me to understand and be passionate about history because I felt like I was engaging in things from the past. And I felt like I was a part of things in the past. And from that moment on, said I wanted to be a history major. Next question, number 5. At what point in college do you get to study your own interests as a history major? That's a very difficult question because most colleges are very different and they don't have the same systems. I've seen a video of some college students in Australia where they get to really pick their own interests from the get-go ever since their freshman year. And they get to pick which classes they want to do, what area they want to specialize in. And it's really almost like when you're in grad school and you're getting your master's or your PhD, that's when you get to really hone in and specialize as much as you want to a freakishly weird extent and basically just pick whatever you want to do. In undergrad, obviously you can pick your own classes, but it's really more or less like the American high school experience, in my opinion. Because, for example, at my university, I have to take 1 Latin America class, 1 Asia class, 1 Modern Europe, a Modern Asia class, a transnational course, and an environmental history course. I have to take all of these, so I don't really get to pick if I want to specialize in a certain region or a certain time period. Of course, within those kind of categories or constraints, I can pick. So it's really just about trying to just pick classes that you think are somehow relevant to your area of interest and trying to make it work. It does not always work out. I'm just saying. Number 6. What is the importance of your college location? That question is probably the best question I've ever gotten as a history major. That is an astounding question. Because universities have libraries. Libraries have special collections and archives. In those special collections and archives, there is a ton of resources and a ton of old documents and materials, usually from the area that the college is located in, or if a famous person went to your college or was associated with your college, their papers and their diaries and their letters and their photographs might be housed there in your university library. So obviously this is very important. For example, I go to the University of the Pacific. What are we known for? We house most of the John Muir papers that exist ever on the planet. So obviously, if somebody wanted to major in environmental history or anything of the sort, if they wanted to focus only on John Muir, they would come to Pacific. Your college location is very important, but obviously we don't have control over that because you can't control what colleges you get accepted to and what kind of award you're going to get, or if you're going to even be able to attend that university. So while college location is important, I would say it's not the be-all and end-all, because your career is not going to be ruined if you don't get into that college that you want to go to, and if you don't get into the college where there's really a very specific focus or interest in what you want to study. Because you can always get a grant and go there and go look at their stuff researching in their library. Question number 7. What is your most memorable experience or the best thing that has happened to you as a history major? I am only in my first year of being a history major, so nothing has really happened to me yet. But so far, the best thing that has happened to me as a history major was just before everything that happened with the coronavirus. I got to go to Chico State University and present my research at a Phi Alpha Theta conference. It was really fun. I had a ton of fun being around so many other history majors and just knowing that I was kind of in an environment where people were all kind of passionate about the same general subject as I was. And not only because of that, but also because just listening to all of them present their research was really cool. They had such unique and interesting topic ideas. For example, one girl who was in the same presentation group as I was, she presented on the history of the Paramount Theater in Oakland. So that was my most memorable experience as a history major. So far, I am looking forward to having many more memorable experiences as a history major. And the last question, number 8. Should I take history as a blank major? Excellent question, guys. That was a great question. As I said in the beginning of this video, history is great because you can study literally anything without having to do any of the work. For example, I know a girl that wants to specialize in the history of medicine. We all know how long it takes to become a doctor. It's many years. Med school is really hard and very long, and stress. Yes, it is very stressful. So this girl that I know, even though obviously studying the history of medicine is nowhere near the same experience or has the same impact on society as being a doctor does, you still kind of get to deal with the same subject matter in studying about medicine, learning about medicine, but within a historical context. So it really kind of opens it up for you to be able to explore anything you want. Taking a history class, even as a non-history major, really enables you to find out about the backgrounds of everything that you're interested in. I'm not an environmental science major, but let's say I were. By taking the history of conservation in the US class that I took last semester, I was able to understand how the environmental movement really was born in the US and how it grew and how it changed over time. The environmental movement that exists right now in the US and around the world is quite different from the one that existed when it first started becoming a thing, which was around the same time as the Industrial Revolution. If I wanted to be an environmental scientist or a lobbyist or anything of that sort, it would be really interesting, obviously, for me to take a class in that subject and understand the backgrounds of it, understand how it developed, understand all of these things. So yes, whatever major you're in, you should take at least one history class. And if you can find one that is mildly relevant to your area of interest or your major, go for it, because you will get a deeper understanding of whatever it is that you're studying. You will understand how it came to be what it is today and how it developed throughout the years and throughout time. And I think it'll just really make you love what you love even more. It'll make you have a greater appreciation for whatever it is that you're going to study. Yes, kids, take a history class, even if you're not a history major. Take a history class in a subject that you're passionate about. Take a history class that explores your own culture and your own ethnicity. or anything you want. Just take one. You will not regret it. Unless you have a bad teacher, then you will definitely regret it, but not going into that right now. You know what? Rate My Professor exists. Go look them up on Rate My Professor and see if they have good ratings or not. If they do, then yes, take that class. It'll bring you great joy to learn about old stuff and find how many ways we're still similar to the way people were back then, or in how many ways we're different to the way people were back then. It is an incredible way to really connect to humanity and understand who we are and how we have or have not changed throughout the years. And that having been said, I will now close this video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye!